On August 10th to 58 AD, under the scorching Roman summer sun, a man of unwavering courage faced an unimaginable ordeal. This was Lawrence of Huesca, a deacon of the Church of Rome, whose martyrdom would engrave his name into the annals of Christian history. The scene was set in a bustling Roman square, likely one of the public forums, which often served as sites for executions meant to deter perceived enemies of the state. Soldiers, their armor glinting in the harsh sunlight, pushed the approximately 30-year-old Lawrence into the center of a hushed crowd. The air crackled with a morbid anticipation. Despite being chained, his face displayed not a flicker of fear, but rather a profound serenity that bewildered onlookers. Before him stood a horrifying instrument of torture, an enormous iron griddle, crafted specifically for prolonged agony, suspended menacingly over glowing embers. The soldiers, grim and efficient, tore off his simple garments, exposing him to the already blistering heat of the day, compounded by the rising inferno beneath the griddle. They then stretched him onto the searing metal, binding his limbs securely to prevent any movement or escape from the escalating torment. The heat was already unbearable, a premonition of the agony to come, even before his body fully touched the scalding surface. As the embers were stoked with bellows, fueled by zealous executioners, the metal began to glow a menacing red in an unbearable intensity. The acrid, sickening smell of burning flesh permeated the air, causing some in the crowd to recoil in horror, while others, morbidly fascinated, braced themselves for the inevitable screams of agony and pleas for mercy. What transpired next defied all human comprehension. Lawrence remained remarkably calm, his face seemingly transfigured by a kind of ecstasy, a divine grace. Instead of contorting in pain, his eyes, fixed heavenward, reflected an inner peace that transcended the physical torment. Then, to the utter astonishment and bewilderment of all present, he spoke to his executioner in a clear, even humorous voice. "You can turn me over. This side is already roasted." This extraordinary act of defiance and sardonic humor in the face of such a brutal death cemented his legacy as one of Christianity's most venerated martyrs, a figure whose courage seemed almost supernatural. To understand the surreal heroism of St. Lawrence, we must delve into his early life and spiritual formation. Born around 25 AD in Huesca, present-day Huesca, Spain, in the Roman province of Hispania Tarraconensis, Lawrence was raised by Christian parents, a testament to the early spread of the faith even in the far reaches of the empire. He received a solid education, likely encompassing classical studies alongside Christian doctrine. Early on, he demonstrated profound religious devotion, marked by intellectual curiosity and a deep commitment to his faith. During his theological studies in Caesar Augusta, modern-day Zaragoza, a significant Roman city in Hispania, he formed a deep and lasting friendship with the future Pope Sickest II. This intellectual and spiritual bond would irrevocably alter the course of his life, linking his destiny directly to the burgeoning Christian community in Rome. When Sickest traveled to Rome, likely to further his ecclesiastical career, Lawrence accompanied him, indicating a close mentorship and shared spiritual journey. Upon his mentor's election as Pope Sickest II into 57 AD, a period of increasing tension for Christians, Lawrence was appointed archdeacon, the foremost of Rome's 7 deacons. This was no ordinary position. It was a role of immense trust and responsibility. In the nascent structure of the early church, deacons performed vital spiritual and administrative roles, assisting bishops and priests in liturgical functions and, crucially, managing the church's charitable work. As archdeacon, Lawrence bore the crucial responsibility of managing the church's assets, distributing alms to the poor, and safeguarding its treasures and sacred artifacts. His role as archdeacon meant he was directly responsible for the vast charitable operations of the Roman Church, overseeing a critical network of aid to the indigent, widows, orphans, and the sick. This direct involvement with the poor, a cornerstone of early Christian practice, would later become central to his famous confrontation with the Roman authorities. Highlighting his unwavering commitment to the Church's mission of mercy, Lawrence assumed his new role at an incredibly perilous time, as the Roman Empire under Emperor Valerian launched one of the most systematic and brutal persecutions against Christians. In 57 AD, Valerian issued a first edict primarily targeting Christian clergy. This decree demanded that all bishops, priests, and deacons sacrifice to the Roman gods or face banishment. This initial measure was aimed at destabilizing the Christian leadership and forcing a public renunciation of their faith. thereby weakening the nascent Christian community from within. The following year, the persecution intensified dramatically with a second, far more draconian edict. Christian leaders who refused to renounce their faith would be immediately executed, often without trial, and their property confiscated. This second edict, known as the Edict of 258, directly targeted the clergy, making their very existence and practice of faith an act of sedition punishable by death, thus escalating the conflict to an unprecedented level. The storm quickly reached the Church of Rome, the heart of the burgeoning Christian world, on August 6th to 58 AD, just days before Lawrence's own martyrdom. While celebrating liturgy in the catacombs of Praetextatus, a clandestine meeting place for Christians, Pope Sickest II was apprehended during a surprise raid. He was summarily beheaded on the spot, along with 4 of his deacons, namely Januarius, Vincent, Magnus, and Stephen. The swiftness and brutality of this execution underscored the perilous position of Christian leaders and sent a chilling message to the faithful. Upon learning of his mentor's arrest and summary execution, Lawrence, driven by profound grief and unwavering loyalty, rushed to meet him, likely seeking to offer comfort or even share his fate. Tradition recounts that upon seeing Sickest being led to his execution, Lawrence cried out, "Where are you going, Father, without your son? Where are you going, holy priest, without your deacon? Have you offered the sacrifice without your minister? Why do you forsake me?" Sickest, with prophetic foresight and profound calm, responded, "I do not leave you, my son. I merely precede you. In 3 days, you will follow me." A worthier deacon. This poignant exchange, recorded in early Christian accounts, not only foreshadowed Lawrence's own imminent martyrdom, but also highlighted his deep devotion to his spiritual father and his readiness to embrace the same fate for the church. The Roman authorities, particularly the prefect of Rome, likely a figure like Cornelius or Macrinus, swiftly turned their attention to Lawrence. Aware of Lawrence's prominent position as the church's archdeacon and thus its treasurer, the prefect saw a golden opportunity to seize its purported riches. He believed the Christian community, renowned for its extensive network of charity and mutual support, held vast material wealth, gold, silver, and precious artifacts hidden away. He therefore ordered Lawrence to deliver all the church's treasures within 3 days. Lawrence, granted the seemingly generous but ultimately insidious time to gather the riches, worked feverishly during this reprieve not to hide them, as the prefect expected, but to distribute as much as possible to the impoverished. This act was not only a daring defiance of the Roman decree, but also a profound practical application of Christian principles, ensuring that the church's resources truly served its most vulnerable members before they could be plundered. He meticulously dispersed gold, silver, valuable vessels, and other items, transforming material assets into acts of immediate, tangible spiritual and charitable benefit. When the deadline expired, Lawrence, instead of arriving with chests of gold, presented himself to the prefect accompanied by a multitude of beggars, the disabled, the sick, the blind, and the elderly, those whom the church had faithfully supported. "Behold the treasures of the church," he declared with a defiant sweep of his hand. Gesturing toward the destitute, the prefect, feeling thoroughly ridiculed and utterly humiliated by Lawrence's audacious act of faith and charity, which exposed the hollowness of Roman greed, flew into a terrifying rage. He saw Lawrence's action not just as disobedience, but as a deliberate and public insult to Roman authority. He ordered Lawrence to be tortured to reveal the location of the true wealth, believing the public display was a mere ruse to hide even greater riches. Yet, Lawrence remained unyielding, steadfastly asserting that the poor and needy were, in fact, Christ's greatest treasure on earth, the living embodiment of the divine. His unwavering conviction underscored a fundamental and irreconcilable difference between Roman values, focused on material wealth and imperial power, and Christian values, centered on spiritual wealth, human dignity, and selfless charity. Faced with such defiance, and further inflamed by the public humiliation, the prefect decreed that Lawrence should die in the slowest and most agonizing manner possible, roasted alive on a grill. This particular form of execution, while not common, was designed to inflict maximum prolonged suffering and break the will of the condemned, serving as a terrifying deterrent to any who might consider defying imperial authority. For the modern mind, comprehending the sheer magnitude of pain involved in such an execution is almost impossible. The victim was exposed to intense heat, but carefully regulated so as not to cause immediate death. Instead, the skin and muscles were slowly cooked, causing blisters, charring, and prolonged, indescribable agony. It was during this horrifying ordeal, amidst the unbearable heat and the stench of his own burning flesh, that Lawrence uttered his famous words of defiance and humor, a testament to his extraordinary inner strength and spiritual fortitude. Don't let your curiosity burn out. For more illuminating historical accounts, subscribe. While some historians question the exact veracity of this particular account, suggesting he may have been beheaded like other deacons, and that the grill story may have evolved from symbolic imagery such as the Passio Sancti Laurenti describing him burned by charity, the powerful image of the saint on the grill, maintaining his serenity and even his wit in the face of such a horrific death, has captivated the Christian imagination. For centuries, it became a powerful symbol of martyrdom. Tradition holds that during his torment, Lawrence prayed not only for himself but also, prophetically, for the conversion of Rome, believing that his sacrifice would ultimately bring about a change in the empire's heart. Accounts describe his face radiating an unusual light, an aura of divine grace, and his body reportedly emanating a pleasant aroma instead of the expected smell of burning flesh, a common hagiographical detail symbolizing purity and sanctity in martyrdom narratives. These miraculous elements, common in hagiographical accounts of martyrs, served to emphasize the divine presence sustaining him. Many of those present, including some Roman senators who witnessed the horrific spectacle, were said to have been so profoundly moved by his supernatural courage that they converted to Christianity on the spot, deeply impacted by the stark contrast between Roman cruelty and Christian fortitude. His steadfastness under unimaginable pain became a potent missionary tool. Following his death, Lawrence's body was reverently collected by Christians, a dangerous but sacred duty for early believers who risked persecution themselves to honor their fallen. He was interred in a cemetery on the Via Tiburtina, a major Roman road leading east from the city. This burial site would become a sacred ground for early Christian worship. When Emperor Constantine legalized Christianity in the following century, through the momentous Edict of Milan 313 AD, effectively ending state-sponsored persecution, a small basilica was erected over the martyr's tomb, recognizing his immense significance. This initial structure would later be enlarged and significantly rebuilt, eventually becoming the Basilica of San Lorenzo fuori le Mura, St. Lawrence outside the walls, one of Rome's 7 pilgrimage churches, a monumental and enduring tribute to his sacrifice, housing his venerated tomb and serving as a central point of devotion for pilgrims for centuries. St. Lawrence's influence extended far beyond the city where he died, touching distant lands and inspiring grand gestures of faith. In his homeland, Spain, devotion to the saint became particularly strong. This reverence inspired the construction of one of the country's most impressive architectural monuments, the Royal Monastery of San Lorenzo del Escorial, erected by King Philip II in the 16th century, a fervent patron of the arts and staunch defender of Catholicism. The immense complex was deliberately designed in the precise shape of a grill, a powerful and unique homage to the instrument of the saint's martyrdom. This architectural tribute, encompassing a palace, basilica, pantheon, library, and monastery, demonstrates the lasting and profound impact of his story across centuries and continents. Intertwining religious devotion with imperial power, the figure of St. Lawrence has also inspired countless works of art across various periods and styles. Testament to his enduring visual appeal and dramatic narrative, painters such as early Renaissance master Fra Angelico, Venetian Grand Master Titian, and Baroque Flemish painter Rubens vividly portrayed his martyrdom, capturing both the raw horror of the torture and the supernatural serenity of the saint. These artistic representations often focused on the moment of his famous quote, emphasizing his spiritual triumph over physical pain and conveying the profound paradox of his suffering. In literature, his story was celebrated by influential poets like Prudentius, a 4th century Christian poet, whose hymn to St. Lawrence in the Prestafana and Crowns of Martyrdom remains one of the most beautiful and moving texts on Christian martyrdom, offering a deep theological interpretation of his suffering and its redemptive power. His acts inspired countless sermons, plays, and popular tales, spreading his legend far and wide. What makes Lawrence's story truly extraordinary is not merely the physical courage with which he faced a horrific death, though that alone is remarkable, but his profound ability to transform suffering itself into a powerful testimony of faith. By declaring that the poor were the true treasures of the church, he articulated a principle that continues to resonate through the ages. True wealth lies not in material possessions or earthly power, but in selfless service to those most in need. This statement profoundly shaped Christian social teaching for centuries, emphasizing stewardship, charity, and a radical redefinition of value. It directly challenged the materialist values of the Roman Empire and continues to challenge consumerist societies today. His famous phrase on the grill, "You can turn me over. This side is already roasted," reveals not only astonishing courage, but a mordant sense of humor that defies understanding. How could someone in the throes of such extreme pain, facing imminent death, still crack a joke? Such behavior seems to transcend the limits of human endurance and reason. Indeed, many theologians throughout the centuries have interpreted Lawrence's martyrdom not as a feat of purely human resistance, but as a direct example of the power of divine grace acting through an ordinary person. St. Augustine, one of the great Latin church fathers, eloquently wrote of Lawrence, "His love for Christ burned so intensely that he did not feel the external flames." This perspective suggests that what we witness in Lawrence's martyrdom is not just human heroism, but a profound manifestation of the divine. A man so utterly absorbed by his love for God and his commitment to Christian truth that even the most extreme physical pain becomes secondary, a mere fleeting sensation compared to the eternal glory he anticipated. Whatever interpretation one gives to his martyrdom, whether historical, theological, or symbolic, it is undeniable that Lawrence's story has touched something deep within the human psyche. His name remains alive not only in churches, basilicas, and works of art, but also subtly embedded in language itself. The term laurel as a symbol of victory, honor, and achievement is etymologically linked to his Latin name, Laurentius, meaning from Laurentum, an ancient Roman city, or possibly related to laurus, laurel tree, signifying triumph and honor, fitting linguistic tribute to a martyr who triumphed over death through faith. St. Lawrence's story challenges us to reflect profoundly on our own priorities and values. What do we truly consider treasures in our lives? Is it material wealth, status, or something more profound? For what values will we be willing to suffer, to endure hardship, or even to face death? His life and death serve as a potent and timeless reminder that there are things worth living for, principles worth upholding, and if necessary, ultimate sacrifices worth making. In modern times, particularly in societies where comfort, security, and immediate gratification are often highly valued, the story of this man who smiled in the face of the cruelest torture serves as a powerful counterpoint. It reminds us that true human greatness lies not in the pursuit of pleasure or the escape from pain, but in the profound capacity to transcend suffering for the love of something greater than ourselves, be it faith, justice, or service to humanity. Catholic tradition celebrates St. Lawrence as the patron saint of the poor, acknowledging his unwavering dedication to distributing the church's alms. He is also invoked as the patron of librarians for the literary treasures of the church. He protected and valued as archdeacon, and, with a touch of appreciative irony, of cooks and chefs, a humorous nod to his unique martyrdom. His feast day is commemorated annually on August 10th, the date of his martyrdom. On the night of his feast, an astronomical phenomenon seems to pay him homage, the perceived meteor shower. One of the most spectacular annual celestial events is often referred to as the Tears of St. Lawrence. As these dazzling trails of light streak across the summer sky, they appear as if they were the embers that consumed him, now transformed into shooting stars of beautiful and poignant celestial tribute that reinforces his enduring presence in popular imagination and faith. Thus, the story of the man who was roasted alive and smiled during torture continues to illuminate our understanding of heroism, faith, and the extraordinary human capacity to transcend even the most terrible circumstances, offering a timeless lesson on courage and conviction. Enjoyed St. Lawrence's tale? If so, subscribe to help us bring more incredible historical stories to life.